Margaret, is it possible I can change your name so she knows who she's speaking to?
That's fine.
Okay.
I sent a text and I called, and right now there's no response. So I am hopeful that nothing bad has happened.
Chuck, let me know he'll be on in just a couple minutes. He just
Well,
texted me.
that is awesome.
He'll be on close to 6, he told me.
I knew he was trying to do a few things today. Um, we are working on trying to resolve some things with our relocation activities. So, um, that may have been a part of his lack of timeliness.
Real quick, Charlotte, would you like me to highlight whoever's speaking? Or you got that, or did you want to mess with that at all?
I'm going to put it in speaker mode
Okay.
so that instead right now we're in gallery mode. But once we start the interview process, the view can be speaker mode. Like this. I don't know why you're there, but Shavonda.
Oh, I don't have my camera on. That's why. I'm just a background person.
Yeah, but I put it in speaker mode, and you're the only person. I'm speaking, but you're the only person in the big opening in there.
Now
You,
so I don't know how this works, but when I mean, if I'm looking at the big thing, when I move it over, I see you. So I don't know. That's why I was like, I don't know. I can't remember how it comes across on YouTube. So I
mhm.
don't know if that's your view or is that the view that everybody sees.
Let me see what happens with multi-speaker. Like, I don't know why you're the only in my monitor. You're the only one that's showing. What's showing in your monitor, people? Who's in the center of your monitor?
You are, for me,
I am.
as a
And mine is
speaker.
in gallery mode. But if I put it in speaker, uh, right now it's Margaret.
That is weird.
I think that's why you
Oh,
got.
now it's Charlotte. Okay.
Okay, so whoever's talking, that's who comes in. That's what I thought. Whoever was talking, that's who the focus is when it's in speaker mode. Let's do speaker. Now, Liz, you're there on my monitor. Okay. And we can actually do multi-speaker. That's interesting. I think I might leave it in multi-speaker or just in speaker until we start her interview. There we go. Any questions, issues, or concerns, guys? And I hope we won't need it. Y'all gave yourselves 45 minutes to do deliberations, right?
Mhm.
So hopefully we won't need all of that time, but we do need to be able to try and get folks back in a timely manner. So let me look and see. Okay,
Yeah, Chuck just let me know he is ready to be let in. He's entered the room.
I don't see, we don't,
I don't see him. He's not on the thing. He's not on the in the waiting room.
make sure he has the right link.
I only sent out one link to them, the same one I sent to you.
I mean, I know, I'm just saying, maybe he's looking at an old one, but that definitely, you know how somebody pulls up something by email and looks, and he's just trying to get into the wrong place.
Brad, if you could text him to see if he got the right link so we can start on time.
Yeah, there's so many emails. It took me a while to find it. I should have like somehow saved it or bookmarked it or something.
I bookmarked mine. That's how, and then I sent it to myself first thing this morning so it could be as high on the top of my list as possible.
I believe it was sent February the 22nd on a Saturday.
Yes, it was sent on Saturday because the applications and everything were completed on Friday. Now there's 2 people in there. Okay, Chuck. Chuck,
Chuck,
are you ready to go?
Sure.
Yeah, Chuck. Hey, Chuck. Chuck.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, this is why I said, Brad, this is why I wanted to change you guys around. So, Chuck, are you working with your phone this time tonight?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes.
We all can.
That's fine. I just can't go through my headphones, but that's fine.
Yeah, I was asking Brad, maybe he wanted to take the lead since there are some times when we can't hear you or you have technical difficulties with your phone.
Yeah, that's why I sent Brad a message to see who could take lead, him, Liz, or Margaret, one of the 3.
Okay. Thanks, Chuck.
No problem.
So Brad is saying there's no problem. So I'm going to get ready to get started. We are 2 minutes from 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the introduction like I always do. But before I do the introduction, I'm going to turn on YouTube so we can live stream, and we're going to turn on and record so we can record what's going on, and then we'll move from there. Okay?
Okay.
So let me turn on, I'll do the YouTube first. And we're going to live stream. So you all may want to cut your mics off at this moment because I'm hearing some background noise. And I will get ready to record. Good evening, everyone. This evening, this event is to provide the interviews for the candidates who submitted their applications for Legislative District 8 delegate seat that is vacant at this moment. We have 4 candidates that have applied for these positions. These candidates will be interviewed in alphabetical order. The process that we will use is that the legislative district will start the process. So for those who may know me and those who may not know me, let me first introduce myself. I am Dr. Charlotte Wood. I am the chair of the Baltimore County Democratic State Central Committee, and I would like to welcome you to our session this evening. Please know that the process will entail a series of questions for each candidate, and what we will do is allow the candidate to have an opening and closing statement and respond to the questions that are being asked. At this time, we are going to allow the entry of our candidate into our room. So we will start out with our first candidate. Our first candidate is Miss Marsha Briley Savage. And Miss Marsha Briley Savage, welcome to the interviews for the candidacy for Legislative District 8. And you will be interviewed by the Legislative District members from the Democratic State Central Committee for Baltimore County. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce you to the panel. And what I would like to do is have our lead, Brad Kelner, introduce not only himself to you, but then we will have a round robin of introductions of the members of Legislative District 8. So with that, I turn over this particular interview session to Mr. Kelner.
Good evening. Welcome. My name is Brad Kelner.
Thank you. Hello.
I'm joined by Margaret Forte, Elizabeth Brown, and Chuck Kropfelder.
Okay, nice to see you.
Welcome.
meet you. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Ms. Briley. Ms. Briley Savage, thank you for joining us tonight and for applying to fill the vacant delegate seat in Maryland's 8th Legislative District. Tonight, you will be asked a series of 12 questions by the members of the Baltimore County Democratic Central Committee members in District 8. You will also be given time for a 3-minute opening statement and a 3-minute closing statement. I want to pause real quick and see if you have any questions about the process for this evening.
No, I don't. You all were very, gave great instructions ahead of time, so I'm prepared.
All right. Then with that, would you like to begin with your opening statement tonight?
Yes, thank you. So, good evening. Of course, my name is Marsha Brawley Savage. I am a mother, a grandmother, a wife, a daughter, a friend, a neighbor, niece. I was born and raised in Maryland. A resident of District 8 since May of 2000. Been living here for almost 25 years in May. I raised my two children that attended Baltimore County Public Schools in District 8. I've worked in public service for approximately 28 years. I was raised in a family that was in the public service. I was raised that you vote. I was raised that you are kind to your neighbors, that you help your neighbors. We shovel snow. We did leaves. We participated in political events, things like that. You went to church. Just kind of like traditional growing up. I attended public schools. Um, I am very passionate about social justice and economic justice for all. That's my mantra. I'm passionate about, ensuring that people have access to quality education, safe communities. You should be able to eat, sleep, play, work, in your jurisdiction. If you want to work somewhere else, that's fine. If you can get there, that's fine. But if not, we should be able to, I believe that all people should be able to do all those things within their communities. And I believe that everyone should be seen and heard. So with that, that's my opening, just a little bit about who I am on a personal level.
Thank you. Our first question will be from Elizabeth Brown.
Great. Welcome. And each question, we ask that you limit the answers to each question to 2 minutes. And so our first question is, why do you want to serve as delegate for District 8? And what qualifications would you bring to the House?
Okay. I've spent my entire career in public service since 1997. I bring an extensive and diverse experience in public policy, social and economic justice, criminal justice reform, public safety, and public policy. While I've worked across multi-levels in state and local government, um, I've worked and volunteered with nonprofits as well. As a state delegate, it will allow me to work more intimately on legislation and policy that I feel like that I have a high level expertise in, that directly impacts our district and the state of Maryland. Additionally, it will provide a mechanism where I can bring our government closer to our constituents and our community. I'm a big fan of district nights. I'm a big fan of town halls. I attend them, and I think that they are important. And I um, feel like we need to make sure that we do not disconnect, people from government, even though they elect us into these positions. When I'm in my neighborhood, when I'm not working, I am walking my dog, I'm shopping, I'm patronizing businesses in our district. And, I get feedback because I talk to people. I'm a people person. So, and people are disenchanted with government and things like that. And they feel like their elected officials are inaccessible. I've worked in government and I felt that this way when I'm navigating situations and circumstances that I want my elected officials, to address. I've served in state government a long time. I've worked at the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, specialized parole and probation agent. I oversaw a statewide road crews, victim services. So I've worked all over, state government. And being a delegate, it would just put me in proximity where I feel like I could do more. I will be in more rooms. I'll be at the table. I'll be able to help make shape policy that will positively impact our district and just the state of Maryland as a whole.
Thank you.
All right. My question, Liz, are you finished?
Yes. Oh,
Okay. My question to you will be, what do you consider to be one of your greatest achievements or contribution on behalf of the community?
okay. That question. Because I work in public service and usually that I am meeting people when they're at their lowest point in their life, I am very careful and humbled when I'm talking about, achievements and contributions. So I just wanted to frame that up before I go into my answer. I don't want to exploit those moments for personal gain. And I always, when I'm working in the community or at work, in the community or at my job, because I've been blessed that I do what I get paid to do my passion. Um, I value the fact that people trust me with their trouble. Um, so one thing I'm very proud of is that I am the only reentry coordinator in the state of Maryland that a local jurisdiction has dedicated a position for. With that, I am overseeing a project that we are establishing a comprehensive reentry hub in North County and Anne Arundel County. Um, I am developing the policy and the procedures for it. I have established um, the partnerships with all the state and local government agencies and the county agencies. I have convened a multidisciplinary reentry coordinating team where the Department of Age and Department of Health, the Police Department, the Crisis Response, State's Attorney, Office of the Public Defender, and the Maryland Judiciary have all come to the table where we staff cases. And I have created an environment of cooperation and communication across agencies, which is unheard of. And this is something that I want to bring to our district. This is something that I want to bring home. I I established a bus stop at the Ordnance Road. It has been decades that the county was trying to get a bus stop in front of the Ordnance Road Correctional Center. I got that done last year. There is a 1.2 mile walk from the correctional center to Ritchie Highway in order to catch public transportation, and it is sidewalk deficient. So I was able to get that accomplished. So those are just a few things that I was able to get accomplished recently, um, that I'm proud of, that I'm very proud of.
Thank you very much.
How have you supported the Democratic Party and our platform, and how do you intend to do so as a member of the House?
Um, I am blue. Blue is my favorite color, and I am blue. I have worked on several campaigns in the past over 20 years. I can remember even working on former mayor of Baltimore City, William Donald Schaefer, and he even became governor. So that's how long ago that I have worked on campaigns, phone banking, sign waving, um, passing out literature, door knocking. I enjoy it because I enjoy connecting with people and then being able to answer their questions about candidates and things like that. So definitely, as a member of the House, I am an African American woman. I do plan to join the legislative caucus if I'm um, honored or get this position. And I also plan to join the Women's Caucus, Legislative Caucus, because they support issues that are very important to me, like getting that women's pre-release center open in Maryland. So I feel very passionately about women issues and about women concerns and incarcerated women and being gender responsive with programming. So those are two caucuses that I definitely plan to join.
Thank you.
What are your top three priorities if appointed as delegate? And what would be your legislative goals for the current sessions? How will you ensure that you come up to speed quickly as possible to work towards these priorities?
So we all know that the budget is a huge priority. That is the primary goal of the Maryland General Assembly. I just want to make sure that we are clear on that we pass a balanced budget. So that is definitely a priority. So as far as me bringing getting up to speed, I already work as a policy advisor to Delegate Simmons in District 12B. So I am already pacing with certain legislation. So the budget, one of the other things that is important to me with that is the DDA. The DDA, of course, that's for individuals with developmental disabilities. That is very concerning to me. And I would want to take a closer look at those cuts and be mindful of make recommendations on how we can make some other adjustments in some other areas and not allow that community, because they're already underserved. So we don't want to create more of a hardship on that population. And also, how's this, the DDA? Yeah, those are my two. I really don't have three. The budget kind of covers a lot of things. And I also would want to look at what kind of funding, the percentage of funding that the county gets from the state, and ensuring that, again, that even though we know we have to make some tough decisions on the budget, that we are not, undermining or neglecting any of the needs of our district. So we have to be very careful and kind of go through that budget with a fine tooth comb. So really the budget is really a big flag for me, and the BG&E hikes. The Baltimore County is seeing BG&E hikes that other jurisdictions are not seeing. So that is also a concern for me as well.
So what current positions do you hold that you would need to resign from were you to assume the delegate role?
That I would not have to resign from any position.
Thank you.
Well, my question to you would be, what committee would you like to serve on and why? If you're assigned to to that particular committee, what would be your legislative priorities on that committee?
Okay. I am impartial. I love the House Judiciary Committee because that's where the public safety laws, that's where they come through. All our public safety, police, law enforcement laws, all that legislation goes through judiciary. Um, Also, if I couldn't get on judiciary, I would probably want to do health and government operations. Again, those two committees see the legislation that more aligns with what is in my wheelhouse, and I feel like that I will be able to make the greatest contribution to those two committees. Priorities, I know that this always criminal justice reform bills are coming through judiciary. The child support suspension license, getting your license suspended for the incarcerated folks, the solitary confinement, that is being seen on the health and government side, in that committee, but it also gets heard in judiciary as well, because the Department of Public Safety comes under, law enforcement and public safety. Once again, those those two committees will be my favorite. But if I was selected and I will get placed on, I could find my niche and my lane in any one of the committees in the House.
Thank you very much.
How do you propose the government can make life in Maryland more affordable? And what would you do as delegate to help offset high costs and inflation?
So that is a tough question because I know for me and for several people, when we go into the market, we just have seen prices just continue to go up just for things that we eat on a regular basis. I mean, it's not just eggs, it's other, milk and just, juice and just, and then the cost of fresh, organic and healthy foods is just through the roof. I mean, just some folks just cannot afford it. Also, um, the fines and the fees for the services and things that we pay for, in the state. We still haven't, we haven't revisited the fines and the fees with the Easy Pass. We haven't, MBA fees have gone through the roof. While we're kind of focusing on other things, it's just some focusing on one thing, like other things are starting to kind of creep up. So with that, I feel like because while everyone else is kind of paying attention to some of those other things that may not necessarily be a priority for the people in our district, I feel like that I could have my eyes on that stuff and make sure those issues and those things are kept at the forefront as a priority to make sure that just making sure we're looking out for all Marylanders, but we definitely want to make sure as a representative of our district, that we're making sure that those concerns are being heard, seen, and addressed, not just being heard, but also being addressed. So that will require working across party lines, that will require working with the state and local agencies, that will be require working with regulatory agencies. It requires partnership and negotiations and making sure that we are holding people accountable, holding ourselves accountable, holding, these organizations like, the BG&E, just making sure, we are monitoring their fees and fines, prescription drugs, and the prescription, the drug industry as well. So
Thank you.
Crisis.
did Mr. Cropfield X? He's okay.
What are your plans for addressing the housing crisis?
Okay, I heard you. Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, now this is a very complex issue. So when I think about the housing crisis, you're talking about several things. One, you could be talking about affordable housing. So that means, we know that in Maryland, there is 30% of individuals' income is being spent on either rent or the mortgage, right? That's a lot. That's a lot, especially in these days and times, as we, with inflation and things like that, and rising fees and cost on everything. So when you talk about the housing crisis, you could be talking about affordable housing. We need to make sure that people, I guess, making enough money and or that we are keeping the cost of, rent by regulating out-of-state developers that's coming in taking over our apartment buildings, or the cost of purchasing of a house, interest rates and things like that. Or Another thing component of the housing crisis is individuals who are unhoused. So there's homelessness. So we need to make sure that people have access to housing um and what that looks like. So that looks like our shelters, our transitional housing, people coming out of incarceration, things that will cause them to be unhoused and homelessness. And then another component of the housing crisis is they saying that this is what is being said. It's not necessarily that I necessarily totally agree with it, but that people that people that there is a demand and we don't have enough housing for. Oh, did everybody leave? Did something happen, Miss Margaret? Is everyone on screen?
We're here. I think
Oh,
the
okay. I'm
screen is
sorry. It just looked
reformatted.
okay. It looks a little weird. Okay, that there is a high demand and there's not enough housing for people to buy. So they're actually, and if I had the answer to all of this, I would probably be on the cover of Time magazine. However, so I am not sitting here as an expert on housing, because the population that I work with, I'm more looking at the unhoused, homelessness, individual being housed appropriately. So, and how I'm addressing that crisis is through my work with funding, grant funding, ensuring that, I'm putting mechanism in place, that I'm partnering with the recovery and the treatment houses and making sure that people are adequately funded to reside in these places. And then also it's multifaceted, because not only that, then once people get well, then they need to be, get a job so they can have 6 or 7 pay stubs so they can apply to go and live independently. So this is a very complex question that I'm sure I could talk about all night, but how I am currently addressing the housing crisis is through my reentry work and partnering with the treatment and the Department of Health and some of our now nonprofit partners.
Great, thank you. What are your plans to address public safety?
Ooh, I talk about this all night, but I will keep this brief. I currently work in this space, and I'm gonna tell you something that has been troubling to me. My 81-year-old mother should not be asking me about getting her handgun qualification license. That's an issue. That's an issue for me. That, even though we, living in this quiet neighborhood, not that we, we love our neighborhood. We live right here in, in Harford Park and Parkville is, we don't have like the high crime that Baltimore City has and things like that. But we, we do see property crimes. We see people breaking in cars and things like that. So, once again, that's troubling for me. And last year, I went to a joint public safety town hall. It was Baltimore City and our district, Baltimore County. We had a joint town hall, and it broke my heart to see the seniors um making public testimony, some of them which were freshly injured from carjacking, being robbed, or, just being attacked. And, with that, I, as a delegate, would make sure that I would be actively drafting and sponsoring legislation, working with my colleagues, that supports our law enforcement and other first responders. We have individuals that are suffering from elder abuse, just some, we have the sex trafficking, because we're right here with this 695-95 corridor. So we need to make sure that we are supporting our agencies that provides the and first responders with the tools to make sure that they are effective in their jobs, to make sure that our police department, which is great, We have a great police department, Baltimore County Police Department. However, we making sure that they have the tools and the funding to implement 21st century, community to policing, making sure that we're identifying common sense solutions. Because to stand in front of a senior that has a black eye and say that I'm not going to support any legislation that incarcerate juveniles is probably not the right thing to necessarily say to that individual. But I've witnessed that, I've witnessed that. So I will want to work very closely, with our legislators to make sure that, that may work in your district, but that necessarily does not work for the constituents in our district. So how can we collectively come up with some common sense legislation that will make sure that everyone feels heard, safe, and make sure that we're keeping our neighborhoods safe, and that we're not over incarcerating individuals, and we're not locking up our young people and our future, because that's who they are. And also because I'm a grant reviewer for the governor's office on crime control, but it's the governor's office of policy now. It used to be the governor's office on crime control. And I would like to see, I know for us, just for our district in particular, because every neighborhood and community is different, I would like to look at it to see if there was some funding that we could help individuals get ring securities, a ring system or what have you. It's expensive, it can be expensive. And I know that in my neighborhood, because we still have original owners in our neighborhood, elderly folks, and they don't have those systems on their doors. They have dogs, and that works too, that'll work too. But just making sure that we are supporting the constituents of our district. Public safety is a big deal. People got to feel safe. You don't feel safe, you don't go out. You got to go shopping. You got to go to work. You want to get in your car. You pay money for your car. You don't want your doors, and your windows broken and things like that, or think that you're going to come in your house and it's an intruder there. But education, and if someone did want to have a handgun class, making it affordable for individuals, have them at the, partnering with the library or our rec centers, to host these classes, and that we would be able to, subsidize it in some kind of way, to make that happen for our constituents and our neighbors and friends.
Great, thank you.
Okay. As a delegate, how would you fight to protect the right of vulnerable populations and protect classes? Any specific policies that you might propose or advocate for?
So again, this is definitely a space that I have that I continue to work in, because even with criminal justice reform and reentry, people think that it's just about getting people jobs. That's not true. It touches every agency, it touches every family, it touches everyone in some kind of way, whether it's paying taxes to keep these jails and these jails and public, open or what have you, or if you have a family member or someone that you love that's been touched. If someone gets incarcerated, who's raising our children now? A lot of time it's the grandma and the great grandma, the great grandparents and things like that. So I protected classes. It get, of course, our transgender population that is very, that I care about, how people make sure that they are seen and heard, and making sure that they have what they need as well. Our veterans, I'm the wife of a disabled veteran. I'm the sister of a disabled vet. And they are also our disabled veterans are also some of our business owners in this district. And we need to make sure there's no way in the world. You have predatory organizations that are charging veterans to help them get their disability ratings increased. I think that is robbery. I do. I think that that's a crime. And there's no, I don't believe that you should have to pay for, and people who fought for this country and have served in our wars and have seen things that they will never come back and tell us about. Never. And have been forced to probably do things, that they would never come back and discuss with us. The PTSD is real. The sleep apnea is real. The so for them to have to spend money for they get their rating, and then for someone to feel like they are supposed to get a high, like a percentage. And I'm not talking about hundreds of dollars, I'm talking about thousands of dollars because you assisted a vet, someone who served our country, to help them get something that they're entitled to. They're entitled to this. And I think it's an atrocity. I'm definitely a staunch advocate for our disabled veterans, transgender. Of course, I'm a woman. I care about woman issues. I have a daughter. I have a mother. I have aunts. I care about women and us, no matter what color we are. And I do feel, sometimes we're not seen, and heard, and things like that. So, though underserved, definitely the reentry population, um, and our youth, because they have been placed in the pipeline. The system has failed a lot of these young people that's committing the crimes. They have failed them. They're in school, they can't read. I breaks my heart. I have a degree in English. So reading, someone being able to pick up a book, I think that it is an atrocity that we have pushed these students through schools. So of course I am going to fight. I'm a fierce. I do not mind getting in good trouble. I have been known, if you go find my track record, I am known to get into some good trouble when it comes to legislation and advocating for these things. I have no problem having these tough conversations with my colleagues at all, because I'm doing it now. Once again, um, definitely the health and government type things, making sure that people, this birth certificate, the Safe Act or whatever that, that I'm just very, very concerned, and I will be a staunch advocate for that. Not even just here in Maryland. I have no problem. Psychological workplace safety, huge, huge, huge. We have a hard enough time living life now. You don't need to go to work and have to, compete or grapple with your boss being mean or making it unbearable for you to even do your job and to support your family. So I am big advocate. I will be I'm also, planning on even going down to DC, um, and seeing and looking at, some of the hearings and being present, and just because that's what I used to do several years back. So I need to get back to getting down to DC in between all my days and time. But all that legislation that's around our vulnerable population, the DDA, big, very important to me. But it's personal as well, because I have family and friends, that have developmental disability. My grandson is autistic, so it matters to me, and I need to make sure that there are resources for people. People should not have to figure it out, have to make 10 phone calls to try to figure it out.
Thank you very much.
District 8 state delegation truly works together as a team, including from our delegation down to our District 8 Central Committee members. Could you describe your approach to working as part of a team?
I am I have a very inclusive and cooperative approach. Again, it is demonstrated. It's not something that I'm just making up. I was able to establish a multidisciplinary team. That is huge, to be able to get all those agencies in a room once a month in person, and to get all of us, and we are not arguing when we're in the room. We are getting, things done. We are moving things along. So I believe in creating a sandbox where partnerships and collaborations are mutually beneficial to everyone. That I also believe in transparency and ethical governance. Once again, I like people to be empowered with information. If you don't want to know, that's fine. Don't come to the meeting, but it doesn't negate the fact or my responsibility to ensure that individuals, people in our community have access to information that is happening in the policy making that's going on in Annapolis. So I'm definitely in am amenable and groomed and accustomed to working collaboratively with others of different opinions. I respect everybody. Everyone want to be heard. I'm big on that. So I can respect, I can agree to disagree. I can agree to disagree. I can respect someone's. I can pause and take a moment and think about your perspective and rethink and maybe even rethink how I'm postured on something. I don't have to necessarily dig my heels in on everything. So, the sandbox.
Thank you. I believe Chuck has our last question.
What are your plans for 2026, and do you plan to run for delegate?
Okay. Well, if I'm selected to fill this vacancy, I'm going to answer that. I'm going to say I will earn the voters' confidence through my continued work. So that's my answer to that question.
Right. Thank you. That concludes our questions for this evening. You now have 3 minutes to provide a closing statement, and that will conclude your interview for the evening. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, I want to first thank all of you for allowing me the opportunity to interview. I have a demonstrated track record of being an independent thinker and a fierce advocate that is accessible and transparent. I understand the value of working within multi-levels of government and with diverse groups on bipartisan issues. It is important that as a public servant and an elected official, that we need to ensure that we understand the issues that are important to all of our constituents in the district. What is important or an issue for one district may or may not necessarily be an issue for another district. However, we need to be consistent with ensuring that one, we keep our communities informed on legislation that would directly impact them. Two, invite them to participate in the process beyond the election time. And three, be accountable and transparent and close the gap between Annapolis and the people. Endorsements are great. However, I believe the greatest endorsement is that of the constituency.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I believe you are on mute.
I will, thank you so much, Mr. Croner. I will allow the next candidate to enter. We're a little bit off schedule, but I'll try to remind the candidate of the time frame for each question. So with that being said, let me Good evening, Ms. Caitlyn Kelner. Are you with us this evening?
I am right here. Thank you so much.
I am happy to have you. Welcome. You will be spending time with our Legislative District 8 members. They will be asking you a series of questions. Each question will be up to 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm going to let the panel go ahead and talk to you about the rest of the instructions. Welcome, and we really appreciate the fact that you could be with us this evening. So, Brad, you can take it from here.
Good evening, Ms. Kelner. Welcome, and thanks for joining us. I'm Brad Kroner on the District 8 Central Committee. I'm joined by Margaret Forte, Elizabeth Brown, and Chuck Kropfelder, also from the District 8 Central Committee team. Thank you for joining us tonight and for applying to fill the vacant delegate seat in Maryland's 8th Legislative District. Tonight, you'll be asked a series of 12 questions by members of our team. You will have 2 minutes to answer each question, in addition to a 3-minute opening statement and a 3-minute closing statement. I want to pause there and see if you have any questions before we begin.
No, I am ready to go.
All right, take it away. Please let us begin with the opening statement.
Okay. So good evening, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Caitlyn Kelner, and I am a lifelong multi-generational resident of District 8. I have gone to school here, worked here, and all volunteered in this district. This is where my husband and I chose to settle down and build our family together. In fact, I could even walk to my childhood home from where I'm currently at. I am fully invested in this district and its communities. I have over a decade of service to our communities. I've held multiple roles within the Linover Improvement Association, and I'm on the board of the Fullerton Fireworks Foundation. I'm currently spearheading a group that joins together multiple community associations inside the Beltway, where we are working together to advocate for funding versus competing against each other. I was also appointed to the Councilmatic District 6 Baltimore County Code Enforcement Task Force, and I was a member of the Baltimore County Community Planning Institute. I worked on community issues ranging from zoning, public safety concerns, and advocating for our schools. And I have taken part in ensuring that families are fed, green space is protected, and have hosted community events that bring residents together. In 2022, I did run for the Baltimore County Council District 6 primary, and I didn't make it out of that primary. I could have hid, I could have just gone back to life as it was, but instead, I chose to look to the states and find other ways to help my community. Delegate Michelle Guyton also saw that vision and asked me to come on board as her policy director, where I'm currently serving and working in my third legislative session. I have the track record in Annapolis to prove that I am ready to be District 8's next delegate. I have successfully worked on legislation that provides accessible prescription labels. I have helped create a pilot program for outdoor preschools. I have written and passed a comprehensive package for veterinary professionals that include helping with regulations and clearly defining what a registered veterinary technician can do, and have created consumer protection for pet insurance. I've also worked and passed legislation to create a purple alert system to help find Maryland's most vulnerable missing residents. My success in passing legislation and policy work, combined with my years of community experience, means that I am ready on day one to be the next delegate. I know the community needs, along with the right way to support, craft, and pass legislation to get work done. We need somebody that is out in the community and has that experience, and I am that person. I am grateful to have the support of multiple community leaders, including George and Carol Stover, Mr. Carol Pupa, Lily Rowe, Mr. Rob McMahon, Corey Johns, and Mr. Delroy Trips. I am also endorsed by Delegate Michelle Guyton. I am endorsed by Maryland Now for my commitment to supporting women's legislation. And I am incredibly proud and grateful to be supported and endorsed by District 8's own Delegate Nick Allen and Delegate Harry Bhandari. Delegate Allen and Delegate Bhandari both have the confidence and faith in me that I am the best team member to work alongside them in Annapolis. Together, we are ready to do the people's work and hold the seats in 2026.
Thank you. Our first question is from Liz Brown.
Okay, great. Well, welcome tonight, Caitlyn. Why do you want to serve as delegate for District 8, and what qualifications would you bring to the House? And just a reminder, we're doing 2 minutes per question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Liz. I want to be the delegate in District 8 because I want to serve my community. As I stated, I'm a lifelong multi-generational resident, and I have no plans on leaving this community. I am heavily invested. I know what this district looks like as well as I know the back of my hand. I want to take to Annapolis legislation that matters to the constituents of District 8. I've already had multiple residents in the district meet with me and say, this is a priority of mine. How can you help as my next delegate? And I want to serve them. I also want to be the person in the delegate with her feet on the ground like Senator Clausmeyer was for me and for this district. In terms of qualifications, I am ready to hit the ground running. As I stated, I am policy director for Delegate Michelle Guyton, and I'm in my third session working on legislation. This means drafting legislation from scratch. This means working with advocates and constituents to ensure that that legislation passed. It means drafting amendments to ensure that everyone is happy with the bill. I know who the players are in Annapolis. I know how floor sessions work. I know the hurdles that we're looking at in our committees and what work is still left to be done on the budget. I'm already down there doing this work. It's just time that I'm able to do it for District 8. Combined with my community experience, I really feel like I am ready to get to work. In fact, I have the bill language drafted for several bills that constituents have brought me that I am prepared to pre-file in October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Caitlyn. My question to you would be, what do you consider one of your greatest achievements or contribution on behalf of the community?
Thank you so much, Margaret, for the question. So one of my greatest achievements for the community is getting funded reinstated for the US 1 Baltimore City line to I-695 urban reconstruction project. And that is a mouthful. So we're going to call it the Streetscape project from here on out. And this Streetscape project was originally started by multiple community groups and activists to help with reinvestment and safety investments on Bel Air Road. The county side actually lost funding for that project under the Hogan administration. And when I became president of the Linover Improvement Association, I reformed the group working on the Streetscape project. I was at town halls for both the county and the House delegation, testifying in support for funding. I was sending photos of every car accident. I was out, with photos seeing, people using mobility assistance devices in the middle of Bel Air Road. I was the one kind of sending all the emails and being like, hey, we need to bring this back to being a priority. I was grateful that the county executive did end up including Bel Air Road back into the county priority funding letter to MDOT and SHA, and we did apply for a RAISE grant. But then in November of 2023, the community got a mailer saying that design funding had been reinstated. And that was a huge milestone for this community. Since then, we've had an open house, and we do realize that we are facing the budget challenges with this, but we are still so grateful that this is back on the radar for so many people, because nobody should be in the middle of Bel Air Road, using a walker or another, mobility assistance device. So, we plan on still advocating for that. And I'm so incredibly proud that that came back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How have you supported the Democratic Party and the Democratic platform, and how would you do so as a member of the House?
Thank you so much, Brad. So the Democratic Party is in my blood going back all the way to my grandfather's time as a lawyer in Baltimore City, where he was involved in Democratic politics with Mayor D'Alessandro. My father worked on campaigns, with his first campaign being Mandel and Lee. And as a small child, I would go to the polling places with my parents and even made them wake me up to ensure that President Clinton won re-election, because I was incredibly concerned about that. I have volunteered on multiple campaigns, including for the District 8 slate. I'm often the girl that you see at Fullerton Elementary School working polls. I've volunteered for multiple candidates, from sign waving to door knocking and phone banking. And that includes presidential candidates from Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris to, Johnny Olszewski when he was running for county executive. I've supported, our now county executive, Kathy Clausmeyer, Delegate Michelle Guyton, and more. I ran for Baltimore County Council as a Dem in 2022. I'm a proud graduate of Emerge Maryland, which helps train Democratic women run for office, and I attend the Baltimore County North Dem meetings when I can. I plan on supporting Democratic priorities in the House and their initiatives. I want to be an active member of the caucus and work on legislation that truly matters to the party and truly matters to the people of Maryland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are your top 3 priorities if you are appointed as delegate, and what would be your legislative goals for the current session? How would you ensure that you come up to speed quickly as possible to work towards these priorities?
Thank you so much, Chuck, for the question. So my top 3 priorities are focusing on the economy. That includes passing a balanced and fair budget that supports the working class, along with helping with the high utility cost and prescription medication. It also includes my second priority is supporting women's rights and the rights of vulnerable Marylanders. With so many challenges and threats coming from the federal administration, I'm ready to get to work to help continue to protect women and our most vulnerable residents. My third priority is supporting Maryland small businesses. As someone whose family owns a small business, we need to be having our small businesses have a better seat at the table and find out how we can best support them to help keep them thriving. As a delegate, I realized that my appointment will be coming very close to crossover, and getting legislation out of rules, which we know is primarily used for emergencies such as the bridge collapse, would be incredibly difficult. My legislative goals this session would be to support the legislation that is in line with the values of the Democratic Party and District 8. We know that we're going to have some tough floor sessions coming up, such as with HB 930. I plan on supporting and defending that legislation in the House to ensure that it's passing. And I also plan on supporting my teammates and their legislation that they have to get over the finish line. How do I plan on getting caught up to speed? I feel like I am pretty caught up to speed. I'm in Annapolis already working on this legislation. I'm familiar with floor sessions and how the House floor system works, along with the priorities of the different caucuses and committee hearings. I'm entering my third crossover right now, and I understand the rapid pace in which we're going to be moving. I'm also prepared to utilize my teammates, my committee and subcommittee chairs, along with my assigned mentor to help in areas that I may need assistance on.
So what current positions do you hold that you would need to resign from were you to assume this delegate role?
Thank you, Liz. I would need to resign as Delegate Guidance Policy Director, and I would most likely need to resign from the board of the Linover Improvement Association. I'm on the board until November as past president. So, just so that way there's not a conflict of interest, I would resign from that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what committee would you like to serve on and why? If you're assigned to that committee, what will be your legislative priorities on that committee?
Thank you so much, Margaret. So I would really love to serve on the Environment and Transportation Committee. My experience with the Baltimore County Code Enforcement Task Force, my zoning advocacy, and being a part of the Community Planning Institute, along with all the advocacy and work I've done on that Bella Road Streetscape project, make me the perfect candidate for the E&T committee. My priorities would focus on transportation equity, especially on how it relates to people with disabilities. And I would also be focusing on environmental protections for our green space and our waterways. I am also the veterinary girl in Annapolis, and a lot of the veterinary bills that you hear are actually in environment and transportation because the Department of Agriculture is who oversees veterinary board. So, Maryland, in my experience with veterinarians and my research, we still have some ways to go to really have good legislation that really helps that profession. So I feel like I could best serve them on that committee. Plus that District 8, with CCBC right off of Rossville Boulevard, that's the home of the veterinary technology program. So it would be a really great fit to have me on that committee. And I'm going to take the question a step further. On the Baltimore County delegation, I would love to be a part of the local issues subcommittee. My experience as a community association leader and my connections with community groups would make me a really good fit for that subcommittee. And in the Women's Caucus, because I do plan on joining that, I would love to work on the Women's Pre-Release Center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How would you propose the government can make life in Maryland more affordable? And what would you do as delegate to help offset high costs and inflation?
Thank you so much, Brad. So we need to make sure that the budget is balanced and fair for working class people. We also need to protect our consumer from bad actors who could be taking advantage of people right now with inflation. I'm ready to work with our state and local agencies to help keep Marylanders protected. But a major cost that is impacting families in Maryland is the cost of high childcare. We know that childcare on average can be anywhere from $14,000 to $17,000 a year in Maryland, which is a lot of money when you're already dealing with high cost and inflation. And not having access to affordable childcare can mean that that's having an impact on your local economy. You may have a parent at home. You may have, an employee calling out with chronic absenteeism, and it can really cause a financial strain. Childcare affordability has been a priority of the Women's Caucus, and there is
What are you to address the housing crisis?
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. It is a priority, and we are working to navigate affordability issues. And we have bills coming up like HB 862, which is the Child Care Affordability Commission. Assuming that bill passes, the interim report will be due on January 1st of 2026. I am willing to start drafting legislation based off of that interim report to help drive down the cost of childcare for families. I also believe that we need to be having conversations with our small businesses. Multiple times, small businesses are paying higher fees than bigger corporations. Maryland has over 640,000 small businesses in our state, and they're the backbone of our economy. We need to be working with them and advocating for them to ensure that they are, they're not being hit by the inflation. They're not passing those costs off to consumers. We need to be there and advocating for them, and I plan on doing that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Chuck. Chuck, are you there? All right, Chuck may be having some technical issues. So, are you there?
Ready?
All right, I will go ahead. What are your plans for addressing the housing crisis?
Thank you so much. So when we think of the housing crisis, a lot of times we think about building new housing units. And Maryland's passed legislation to help with that, but we really need to look at our vacant, or what they call zombie homes. These are homes that have been sitting empty for years, in some cases decades. There are often problems for community associations, there are issues for neighbors, there are issues for code enforcement, and they are issues for elected officials because they get the complaints on them. We need to be creating a way to get those houses fixed back up and back onto the market for affordable housing. Governor Moore signed the executive order for the Baltimore Vacants Reinvestment Council in December for Baltimore City. We need to look at the success rate of that program and develop it to a statewide program to help with these zombie properties. We also need to look at empty office space and dead malls. Turning those empty office spaces and the dead malls into micro units or apartments could be beneficial to people who just want a smaller space. It's also a great way to utilize property that is sitting without having to develop new buildings or destroy green space. We can create incentives for developers and property owners to convert those dead, properties into housing. And there are states like California, Illinois, New York, and Pennsylvania that have all passed legislation or are working on legislation that encourages that type of development. I'm prepared to partner with our community leaders and our Department of Housing to see what legislation needs to be done to get the ball rolling on that.
Thank you.
What are your plans to address public safety?
Thank you, Liz. So District 8 has sadly had our issues with public safety as of late. We've had several horrible incidents occur, from the mass shooting in Towson to the horrible tragedy on Christmas Eve that claimed the life of young Jacoby Jones. There was a murder less than half a mile away from my house in October that no one has really addressed. So I'm quite familiar with these issues. With my experience as a community leader and advocate, I have relationships with the community outreach officers around me and police leadership. I actively attend the Police Community Relation Council meetings, and I am familiar with their leadership as well. I plan on maintaining those relationships and attending those meetings. And if I'm unable to do it because I'm on floor or in committee, I will have a representative there, because that's where we're hearing the concerns. And maintaining those relationships helps with, increasing community safety. I also plan on maintaining the relationships with community groups and leaders, because they're the eyes and ears on the ground to share what is going on. And because I believe in a well-rounded approach to public safety, it involves supporting groups like the House of Ruth and the Maryland Crime Victims Network. They're amazing organizations that will support survivors and victims of violence to help ensure that, they are maintaining their level of safety post that tragedy as well. It's also about reinvesting in our youth and our communities. And it's supporting the initiatives like the Women's Pre-Release Center to help, support these women and keep recidivism down. We could also talk about housing with our police officers and making housing affordable to have them living in the communities that they're serving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a delegate, how would you fight to protect the rights of vulnerable populations and protected classes? Any specific policies you might propose or advocate for?
Thank you so much, Margaret. So the rights of so many right now are coming under attack with the federal administration, and it's crucial for Maryland and District 8 to work to protect people. For starters, I am committed to protecting the rights of women in this state. Yes, we passed question 1 last year, which is great, but we need to prepare for the possibility to enact more legislation. I've heard from several constituents and advocates that there are loopholes that we need to close, and we may even need to further protect medical practitioners who serve in reproductive health. And I'm ready to tackle that legislation head on. District 8 is also home to multiple immigrant communities, so I will be maintaining communication with them to ensure that they're taken care of. And if you have been paying attention federally, you're seeing executive orders that could impact the lives of so many residents of District 8 and Marylanders. I've heard from constituents and friends and families and customers about their worries that they're not going to be able to practice the spiritual path they choose, or they're not going to be able to love who they love, or they're not going to be able to have protections as a trans person. No one should feel that way or worry. So I will advocate for additional protections for your religious freedoms, and I can't believe I'm saying that in 2025. I will continue to make this state a safe space for everyone, especially if you're a part of that LGBTQ plus community. Part of the policy that I want to look at is that there is no language in our Maryland State Constitution that talks about marriage. And yes, we did pass the Marriage Act, but the fact is that there's no language that explicitly protects the rights of all Marylanders to marry who they want to. I plan on bringing that up, and I will happily lead that legislation to ensure that everyone in Maryland is protected no matter what.
Thank you very much, Caitlyn.
Thank you.
So, District 8 truly works together as a team, including our state delegation and our District 8 Central Committee members. Could you describe your approach to working as part of a team?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Brad. So I've been a team player throughout my entire professional life. I was a young manager at Build-A-Bear, and I would support my team then, that often included of peers my own age and even younger. And I've always supported the team at my family's business with our multiple employees. And I love District 8 because District 8 has always operated as a team since I was a small child. I personally have always viewed myself as a part of the D8 team, as a community leader and a volunteer. These aren't just my elected officials, but my friends and neighbors. And I am grateful for all the times they have popped their heads into Delegate Guyton's office to talk to me about issues, legislation, and community needs. I know that now County Executive Clausmeyer would hold breakfast between the electeds and the Central Committee members, and I want to continue that tradition. I want to see events where the whole team's at, and it's the whole team being advertised. It's not just one person. We're in this together. We're here to work together. I want to lead team events. I want us to all, be sharing that credit because we're all great volunteers and we're all great activists. Full disclosure, I want to host a committee night in Annapolis. So I want us to all be down there, so that way everyone gets to know this team as well. And I am prepared to, be at breakfast, have those meetings. I want to be a phone call away and really kind of help support and uplift the Central Committee while also supporting and uplifting my teammates.
Thank you.
What are your plans for 2026, and do you plan to run for delegate?
Thank you so much, Chuck. So this has been the discussion for some time on what my plans for 2026 would be. I'm in an incredibly unique position in that I have strengths in both county government and state government. However, my calling in my heart has led me to the House of Delegates. Being a delegate is how I feel that with my experience, I can best support and advocate for my community. Yes, I will be running for delegate in 2026. And if I am appointed, I will be running with the District 18. I can easily hold and defend the seat to maintain the Democratic sweep that we had in 2022. I am fully prepared to be out canvassing and working the community on behalf of myself and the District 8 team. And if I'm not selected, I still plan on running for delegate.
All right. Thank you so much. That concludes our questions for you this evening. We would now invite you to share 3 minutes of closing remarks.
Thank you so much. And first off, I want to thank the members of the Central Committee for their work and questions. I know that it's been an incredibly busy time for you all with District 8, and I just want to acknowledge the work that you are doing to keep things moving. So thank you. I also just want to take a second and just thank my support system, my amazing family, my parents, and my amazing husband, Sean, for being my biggest cheerleaders. And I also want to thank Delegate Michelle Guyton and Corey Johns, along with Delegate Allen and Delegate Bendari for their continued support and their endorsements of me. I'm so excited to get to work with all of you. I've been told that I'm pretty tenacious, and for our communities, you bet I am. I am proud to be the person in this district who people call when they have questions about letters that they got in the mail from the county or when they have issues with health insurance. I've gotten funding for longstanding events in this district when they suddenly lost funding and were at risk of being canceled. I am the woman who knows the history of this district and the values that are important to the community. And I am honored to be the person that people have called on when they've needed assistance in their homes or they want to share about topics that are important to them. And I am so incredibly proud of the work I've done in Annapolis. To see people being helped by the legislation you've worked on and passed is such a powerful way to give back to your community. From HB 1097, which I experienced firsthand in December at PETIR, to seeing the purple alert come across your social media and seeing that a person was found safe, there's just such impact in that. I am committed to District 8 and the Democratic priorities that we are setting forward. I actually think that being a delegate is one of the highest ways that one could serve and give back to their community. The seat belongs to no one except to the people of District 8. And the people of the district deserve someone who is prepared to know how Annapolis operates, along with a knowledge of county policy and a proven track record of successful partnerships and past legislation. In a time of uncertainty on a federal level and the changes that our government is facing locally, the very least that we can do is give District 8 the peace of mind, stability, and experience they deserve. They deserve someone who shows up daily, prepared to get the job done, and prepared to represent them. They deserve someone who has the partnerships in community and local government that can work across party lines and jurisdictional lines to get the best results. And they deserve someone who is a team player and who will defend the seat in 2026. My name is Caitlyn Kelner. I have the track record, experience, and proven results in Annapolis and in the district. And as we say in committee, I respectfully ask a favorable report to be District 8's next delegate. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. So
Ms. Kelner.
thank you. I leave
You may return at 8:30.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good evening, Ms. Ross.
Good evening.
If you don't mind, I am going to change your name.
What did it do? What did it call me?
It calls you Baltimore County Democrats. So we'll just change your name really quickly, if you don't mind.
Oh, I don't.
And welcome, Ms. Ross. All of us know you because you're on the Central Committee, and I'm sure that many individuals who may also know you from the external viewing of our YouTube, but I'd like to welcome you to this session and invite you to meet the panel for Legislative District 8, which you reside in and are a participant of on the Central Committee. So I'm going to hand over this particular portion of our session to Mr. Cronin.
Good evening, Ms. Ross, and welcome.
Thank you,
I'm Brad
Good
Croner, joined by Margaret Forte, Elizabeth Brown, and Chuck Kropfelder. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. Thank you for joining us tonight and for applying to fill the vacant delegate seat in Maryland's 8th Legislative District. Tonight, you will be asked a series of 12 questions by members of the Central Committee. You will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and you will have opportunity for a 3-minute opening statement and a 3-minute closing statement. Before we get started, I want to see if you have any questions.
I don't, Brad. Thank you. Excited to be here and talking with you all. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, and please feel free to take it away.
Great. So as you all know, I already represent the residents of District 8. I come with the endorsement of the state senator who held this seat. I'm really honored to have it. There's really nobody who's in a better position to tell you what District 8 needs in this delicate position than the person who had the seat. So I'm really grateful for that. I also have, as you know, the endorsements of a dozen community leaders in and around this district who have all signed and told you that they want to continue their work with me. They've provided you some very specific examples of how they've worked with me. So they're not just saying we like her, they're telling you some very specific things that they've been able to do with our partnership together. You've also received endorsements for me from elected officials. I'm so grateful because they're all very credentialed individuals, have known me, several of them for over a decade of my life, telling you who I am, how they've worked with me. They know my background. And so I'm thankful for that. You've gotten letters from families who have been on the receiving end of the policies I put in place in my leadership, specifically telling you how the work I've done has made life better for them and their families, how they feel safer because of what little old me has done for them and their families. So I'm very thankful for that. I just want to start there. As you know, I'm an elected member of the Central Committee, and I know you all in that way. But I also serve as a president of a homeowners association, which is a governing body. So with the authority to pass what's called resolutions, which are laws in a community. So I just want to separate that from community associations, which are totally different. HOAs are actually governing bodies, and we have laws that are passed every year that dictate how we operate. And I try to stay on top of those laws and make sure we're compliant. So as a head of an association, I've used the authority that I have to pass resolutions and make decisions that have made the community safer and better. I'm also, as you know, appointed by the governor to the Board of Trustees for the Community College of Baltimore County, which is the largest community college in the region. And I've in that role, I've passed education policy for students. I have a strong track record in both those capacities of creating access for students, addressing quality of life issues. I have a voting record that speaks to that. Both those positions come with fiduciary duty, which is a legal obligation to act in the best interest of the people I represent. So, and I don't think anybody else in this process has fiduciary duty bestowed upon them by the state or a public voting record. I do. So stepping into the delegate position, I would be somebody who already has a high level of accountability, fiduciary duty assigned to me by the state. I'm someone who's already been delivering constituent services to District 8, delivering on behalf of District 8 residents, already solving the problems that people here care about, already working, already making a difference right here on the ground in the district for individuals and families through effective policy leadership and engagement. And I just want to note that I was also, as some of you know, I've been awarded for that work that I've done in the community, my mentoring, my professional achievements in my professional career. I was awarded one of the top 100 women in Maryland by the Daily Record. I was also named Woman of the Year by the Baltimore County Women's Commission and named by this Democratic Central Committee as one of the top 10 Dems in Baltimore County. And I'm very grateful for those things. But, you know, my track record in the community is matched by my experience with Annapolis legislative process, my relationships there. I started political engagement many years ago as a young Democrat, where I was elected to the executive board, advocating for legislation, working with legislators to pass bill ideas, supporting the community. That's one of the many things that I think sets me apart from anyone else in this process. Is my long track record with the party, with community leadership. I think you may have candidates who have been in Annapolis learning some things over the last couple of years that I learned over 10 years ago. And I've been applying that for years, passing policies, working with legislators, building relationships across the county that really benefit the people who live here. So the truth is, I believe I've done more from the outside than some of the candidates may have done from the inside. I've passed policies that have improved public safety. I've helped create education access and affordability. I've supported minorities and vulnerable populations. And I've made decisions that have put money back into people's pockets. I've done all of that standing on my own 2 feet, 10 toes down, without the apparatus of the General Assembly or the motivation of compensation. I think this is a very serious time for us as a country, and we need local and state leaders who are tested, who have been in decision-making roles, who've been making the tough decisions, who have experience balancing large budgets, managing staff, setting vision and executing it. These are all things that I've done in my professional work and community leadership roles. And I look forward to talking to you more about that tonight.
Thank you so much. Our first question is from Liz Brown.
Great. Welcome, Kim. Great to talk with you tonight. Why do you want to serve as delegate for District 8? And what qualifications would you bring to the House?
Sure. Hi, Liz. Thank you for the question. I've decided to serve as delegate mostly because as a community leader, sometimes I feel like I'm running out of the tools I need to do all the things that I want to do for the community. It really is that simple. I feel like I've been a good steward over what God has entrusted me with, over the platforms that I have. I do a lot. But at a point, you do need a legislative tool to get some certain things done. I want to be able to require, for example, more support for homeschool families, put more protections in place for women and children, support governing bodies and homeowners who live in common ownership communities like I do. I want to be doing that work. I don't want to be, and I work with legislators, I always work with legislators to do some of those things. But I don't want to be working for necessarily someone who's there doing it. I want to be in Annapolis working for you. So that was the first thing that made me think this might be a way for me to move a needle further on the things that I in my community care about. I also am very concerned about the lack of minority women from Eastern Baltimore County in positions of leadership. On the local and state level, there are actually no African American or minority women serving in the entire House of Delegates. There's never been a minority woman in the House from this district. And I think we have to change that. I had to ask myself a question last year, to be honest with you. And that question was, what's the point of fantastic women like Angela Also Brooks, Kamala Harris, opening a door for women who look like me if we don't walk through it? So for me, representation matters, and we must redefine what leadership looks like here. So for the last 2 years, I think the public has been asking, they've been begging for, here in Baltimore County, they've been begging for leadership that reflects the population, both in terms of the number of representatives on the local level as well as the diversity. And the Vote for More initiative we all know about. I've also worked and helped with that. Council expansion bill, the way we passed that at the polls was a really definitive statement on how people feel about that. And I think we can't be tone deaf to what the public is calling for. As leaders, that's our job, is to listen to the public. And so I took it as a call. I mean, the truth is, to be honest with you, that was a big part of why I decided that I had to do this at this time. The qualifications that I bring, I have actual policymaking experience on my own, standing on my own 2 feet. I've passed resolutions related to public safety, fines, architectural guidelines. I have passed education policies with my board colleagues that have expanded access to students, created new education programs to support the workforce needs of the region. I'm really happy to say that I was able to vote and pass Juneteenth as an official holiday across all of our campuses for people who want to observe it. I also have experience serving on a policy board and a committee similar to Annapolis. So within committee with the community college, we sit on long hearings that 4 hours or so, where we listen to what's essentially testimony. It's like presentations, and people come and they talk about the policies that we're going to be voting on, and they tell us how it's affecting their life, why it matters, and then we have to vote, on that policy. So I have experience. I know how to navigate that type of situation. You need to be able to meet with the people on your committee. I serve on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee there. You need to be able to try to be on the same page, or at least feel each other. I know where we stand. That whole thing is a really significant part of being a delegate. And of course, I serve also as a member of a caucus. I'm a member of the African American Caucus of the Association of Community College Trustees. I just met with them a couple of weeks ago in DC. But that's also a really important part of being a delegate, is being able to function within a caucus, navigate that. Lots of people with great ideas, strong idea, everybody's smart. You need to be able to come into an environment like that and make contributions that make sense, and then work together to advance the proposals of that particular caucus. And so I'm somebody who has that experience. I have budgeting experience. I help every year approve a multi-million-dollar budget at the college. I help approve a budget that's tens of thousands of dollars within my community. I oversee the adoption of the budget every year for that. And so I feel like I'm ready to perform all the all important responsibility of passing the governor's budget bill when that time comes next month or early April. And so I think, that's a very important job. There may be more budget cuts. We need people who have a stomach for having to tell people no, because we might have to. So that's a skill that I have. I have a background trained in communications, writing and editing. So we're talking about writing bills. That's literally my background, is writing, editing, communications, presenting. Those are key skills for any delegate. If I had to name one skill that I think is most important, that probably would be it. Communications and all of what that encompasses. So in my previous roles as communications manager, a part of my job was I wrote policy briefs related to public health policy and healthcare. So I have a lot of experience doing that, writing drafts of bills or bill ideas with legislators going back as far as 10 years ago, emailing legislators to sponsor it. As recent as just a couple of months ago, meeting with the legislator to propose 2 housing bills related to common ownership communities, written resolutions that have passed in my community, as I mentioned. So a lot of experience in that area as well. I also have community engagement, constituent services. I think most of you are familiar with all of what I do in the community, but I have that. That's very important. But most importantly, I would say I have governing experience. So I've addressed a wide variety of constituent concerns. I do on a regular basis. It's not just doing good on behalf of our community. I think probably most people in this process serve their communities and do that, which is great. But in my case, because it's a governing body, I'm legally bound to address those issues. So whether I feel like it or not, whether I think that issue is as important as maybe the resident or the person, I have to address it. If somebody comes to me with something in college, I have to address that. So because of that, I'm a resource in the community. I have relationships with schools, with community groups, with churches. Just yesterday, I was at one of our local elementary schools dropping off a check. I arranged for them to have a sponsor for their Black History program today. They invited me. I could not be there today. Sunday was at a church that was invited to there as a guest within the area. Was at the senior center in the afternoon, invited, not anything political, but because they know me, I have a relationship with them. I look forward to seeing them, so those are things that are important for any delegate to have, just genuinely, not sort of put on or angling for a position. That's my life. So those are the things that I do all the time. That's what my life looks like.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. What do you consider to be one of your greatest achievements or contribution on behalf of the community?
Hi, Margaret. Thank you for the question. By far, public safety. I am very proud of my public safety track record. When I talk to people in the community across the district, people are consistently concerned about safety. And for me, I've been able to address things like trespassing, someone coming in the community, going into unlocked cars, loitering, dogs off leash, sort of the gamut of different things, some very small, but all kind of in that realm of things that happen that make people feel less safe. So for example, there was an incident in my community where a young girl was harmed by a pack of dogs that were off leash. It was 3 Cane Corsos. And I was able to intervene in that situation and pull in my councilman and see if there were criminal charges were necessary with state's attorney and animal services and just my delegate and all those things to support that family at the time. You have a letter from her talking about that support. But I also introduced a resolution and passed it to increase fines for safety related offenses such as dogs off leash, speeding in the community, improper disposal of hazardous waste. And it's really worked, to try to discourage behaviors in the community. We have seen a decrease in safety related incidents. So I'm also now in the process of trying to secure a legislative bond bill to try to pay for a dog park so people can have somewhere to take their dogs off leash. So I'm really proud of that because it's sort of me. It's the way I problem solve. I'm as tough as I am kind. So you're going to pay the fine if you have your dog off leash, but I also recognize that you really don't have anywhere to take him, off leash safely. So why don't we try to work on the dog park piece of that too? That's exactly how I solve problems. It's the carrot and the stick, I think. I've also dealt with partnering with a neighboring community to deal with trespassing. She and I have worked together since then on a number of different things, but the trespassing in particular was kind of a multi-pronged approach. We fixed fencing, we did signage. They have cameras on their property. We had them adjusted to focus on the areas of concern. We organized notices, we did a town hall meeting to just try to clarify some of the property boundaries and trespassing laws and things that people were confused about. So I'm very proud of that. I took a stand against Verizon when they came into my community and did some work with their fiber optic boxes underground. It caused the water to flow through the neighborhood. And so after a year of just fighting with them and trying to get them to be accountable, I involved the state delegate, the lobbyist, the Baltimore County cable administrator to deal with that issue. And ultimately, I won that fight. And my community was made safer because of it. They came out and they fixed the sidewalk. They moved the defective fiber optic box and they put in a drain to prevent the water runoff onto our property. And that's made the community safer. So all those things I really value in problem solving, working with partners. All those things are kind of trademark me. So I'm very proud of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. How have you worked to support the Democratic Party and our platform, and how would you do so as a member of the House?
Thank you, Brad. Well, I've worked supporting the Democratic Party and the platform for over a decade, for a very, very long time. And this past election season alone, I led voter registrations at community block events, at schools. I was a guest speaker at numerous schools on their school assembly, teaching students about voting, the election process, answering their questions, tough questions sometimes too, and encouraging them to vote. I brought in members of the Democratic Party with me to help register students. I've been in Annapolis for their Youth Legislative Day, had an opportunity there to speak with students from across the state about about voting in that election, but also just the electoral process, different questions that they had. I've been a guest speaker I was a guest speaker for several Women for Kamala calls, where I was motivating people to donate, talking to them about how they could get engaged and involved with getting her elected. I was a canvas leader, knocked lots of doors. Um, uh, it was out the night before election day when people were asleep. I was leading a team to put up signs all across this district so that we could have presence. So I've promoted Democratic principles and Democratic candidates, people, electeds in my role as chair of communications. Prior to that, many years ago, I was also working as a young Dem in a communications role as the vice president on the executive board of communications, doing similar work, gaining media attention, media coverage. So I've done that for a very, very long time. My relationship with the party goes back a ways. I was trained by Young Democrats in the National Democratic Training Committee, which is the largest Democratic training organization in the country. So as a delegate, I will continue to partner with the Central Committee to promote Democratic victories and updates from Annapolis through town halls and other means. I will work with you to elect Democrats to office. There are legislatively, there are a number of election bills related to how vacancies are filled. There might be one, I'm not sure if it was reintroduced, but in a prior session related to the petition signature process. That's something that I want to take a look at. And so I'll be making sure that I'm keeping the Central Committee informed about those sorts of pieces, bills, and I'm aware of your position on those impactful pieces of legislation. I'm reflecting your interest where I can. So yeah, so my relationship with the party goes a long ways. I've invested my time and my talent to the Democratic Party for many years. And now I'm here tonight, obviously asking you to invest in me.
Thank you.
What are your top 3 priorities if you're appointed as delegate? And what would be your legislative goals for the current session? How would you ensure that you get up to speed quickly as possible to work towards these priorities? And I will ask that you please limit your response to 2 minutes, please.
Sure, I will. Thank you, Chuck, for the question. Hi. So in general, my top 3 priorities would be public safety, education, funding the blueprint while keeping taxes low, and housing. But for this current session, depending on the committee I'm assigned to, I'll be looking to support bills that are proposed by my caucus, Legislative Black Caucus, Women's Caucus. I've been having some conversations with members of both of those caucuses, and we'll continue that to help me get up to speed. Nobody, whoever you select, is not going to go into Annapolis and start churning out bills. We're in the middle of session. The bill request deadline is passed, drop deadlines have passed. The focus will be doing what you can to get some of these bills passed across the finish line. Lots and lots of voting. And I'm somebody who has, the only one in this process who has a voting record and experience with reviewing lots of sort of dense materials, listening to testimony and presentations, leaning in, asking those tough questions in committee, and then making a vote. So that's going to be the focus of what I would be doing on day. That's what day 1 actually looks like. It's not going in and just passing a bunch of bills at this point in session. So that would be my focus. There are a number of housing related bills that I've been tracking and that I support. One related to establishing requirements for local commission for common ownership communities, bills related to funding reserve accounts. I mean, these are things that HOAs in this district have asked me to prioritize and support. So I would be taking a look at that, connect with the sponsoring legislator who I know very well. We've had many conversations about housing issues to try to help me get up to speed. And then lastly, I would protect district priorities in the budget process, working with the other 2 delegates to support and ways I can support their legislation as well.
Great, thanks. What current positions do you hold that you would need to resign from were you to assume the delegate position?
Yeah, so I'd have to resign from the Central Committee. and resign from CCBC. And I would not end those relationships. I would continue to engage with both groups in numerous ways. But my official affiliation would have to end if I were appointed.
Great, thank you.
What committee would you like to serve on and why? If you are assigned to that committee, what will be your legislative priorities on that committee?
Well, I would serve anywhere the speaker needed me. I would, serve at her pleasure and be honored to do the work. I do think, serving on the Economic Matters Committee would be really special for me. Focusing on insurance rate costs in particular, because we know energy costs are really out of control. And being a part of that committee would give me a voice in the room when it comes to regulating insurance rates. So that's a responsibility I would take very seriously. I do have knowledge about development issues. I was an ambassador with the Community Planning Institute and went through with one of their cohorts and learned a lot about things that I think would help me serving on that committee. I know a good deal about labor and employment issues as a longtime manager of staff working in a professional leadership capacity for companies and associations. I think I could probably leverage what I know to be an effective member of that committee. But that said, though, I would serve anywhere. I do have I think I could make strong contributions on a number of committees. Ways and Means takes up education programs and financing and elections. Obviously, I serve on a college board. I'm very volunteer with BCPS. I know a lot about education programs and financing. As a member of the Central Committee, I'm always tracking the elections bills and know a lot about that. My priority on that committee would be protecting community college funding, primary education title programs, election laws, things like that. Health and Government Operations Committee, I've worked for several health nonprofits, have a good understanding of public health policy and health issues. Environment and Transportation, the Housing and Real Property Subcommittee in particular, takes up the bills related to common ownership communities, which is a deep, deep interest of mine. I have a lot of expertise, obviously, as the president of one of those communities. So I would be honored to serve in either one of them.
Thank you, Kim.
How do you propose the government can make life in Maryland more affordable? And what would you do as delegate to help offset high costs and inflation?
Thank you, Brad. I think we have to focus on reducing expenses. I've thought a lot about this, and I think that's just what we have to do. Like we have to start maybe with housing because that's the biggest line item for most people on their monthly budget. I think we've got to find solutions for affordable housing first and foremost, and then make sure that we invest in housing near transit because a lot of families rely on public transit to get to the jobs that they need to support themselves. So it's very costly to try to buy a car, maintain a car when you have to commute because you're priced out of the area you work in. That happened to me many years ago as a young person here. So I strongly believe we got to invest in helping people live where they work. I would also support and introduce legislation that addresses barriers to home ownership for first-time home buyers because that's the best way to create wealth. I would also fight to protect rental assistance subsidies for low-income individuals to help them afford rent. I think we have to get creative. Like we may have to look at ways we can prohibit price gouging or maybe price controls on certain essentials during inflation. So I think that those are things that we have to think about. College affordability. I've consistently worked with my colleagues at CCBC to try to ensure tuition-free college for most Baltimore County residents. I would continue that fight to protect college funding, community college funding, to help our schools continue to offer that because I think that's really important to do, especially now. And I would also work with federal partners to fight for funding from the Federal Inflation Reduction Act. I need to check on the status of that. The president suspended that funding last month, but then he said it only pertained to certain aspects of it. So I would work with my colleagues to try to engage federal partners on that as well. So, and I would just point out, I actually have a track record in trying to make life more affordable for people. In my community, I've kept assessments low, while many communities in our region have raised assessments for homeowners and common ownership communities. I have not raised them at all during my entire term. I've eliminated capital contribution fees, which prevent the HOA from imposing new owner fees on incoming homeowners. I believe in it, but I think it should be done only for new developments. When a community's been there for a while, I don't think people should have to be paying to move into the community, especially with there not being like a cap on that. The law is silent as to how much you can charge someone for that, which is something I would like to change. But I've also, in removing that, new homeowners don't have that extra little barrier to home ownership. So I've also initiated funding for a reserve account at 10% of the budget to prevent special assessments being placed on homeowners to pay for capital expenses. So I've done things to try to keep put money back into people's pockets.
Thank you.
What are your plans to address the housing crisis?
Thank you, Chuck. I do think housing is becoming one of the biggest crises we're facing in Maryland. Like most people, I agree that the supply is the problem and we have to increase affordable housing. I would work with our council colleagues to look at zoning and building restrictions is something I've been hearing a lot about, whether or not, they're outdated or something, and that needs to be looked at. I learned a lot when I was a participant in the community, a student in the Planning Institute, Community Planning Institute, about that. And it did feel to me in that experience that there were ways that maybe we could make it more attractive for developers to build affordable housing here, not just in Baltimore County, but across the state, and allow for more diverse housing types. So I think we have to do more to incentivize developers to build here. It's not going to happen if policies are outdated, unreasonable, if fees are too high, if the crime is high, et cetera. So I think we have to address all those things. I would also fight for stronger partnerships between the public and private sectors to build affordable housing, including a wider range, like I said, of housing types. I think that in general, that's what it's about, is more housing, attracting developers, affordability. I would definitely have a conversation with housing advocates. I want to know what they're saying, what they're proposing. I want to look at maybe establishing a statewide work group to examine more flexible design and zoning policies. Maybe that's happened. If it has, I would want to look at what they recommended. Where are we with implementing those recommendations? So lots of things. I think a lot of zoning is a jurisdictional thing, obviously local, but I think, I don't know, maybe we need some kind of baseline across the state for certain things, and then, but so anyway, yeah, I think that would be my approach to it. I also think we need to look at keeping people in their homes, and so I would support housing stability and security. I do think some of the good cause or just cause eviction legislation that's back again in Annapolis this session is important for us to look at. I do know some property managers are not in favor of it, and they think it might actually deter development. But I think as we work on more housing, we have to also keep people in their house so we don't exacerbate the problem with more housing insecurity. So I think it's something that has to be addressed in tandem. Personally, I know what that's like. I remember just a personal experience growing up where we did live in a house where it was actually owned by a church. And that church, it was really a parsonage that was not disclosed, that was not known at the time, but they had got a new pastor who decided he wanted to live there, single man. And so they asked a single mother with 4 small children to leave and to give this house to him. And so that happened. So I think now I look at that and I see the injustice in it. I see there were lots of loopholes that allowed that to happen. The fact that it wasn't disclosed just to her, this is a parsonage, the terms around that were not clear. The fact that there was I don't even think the notice was very good. I don't know. The fact that that could be done without any real reason except that he wanted it. So I think we have to look at loopholes like that, and leasing policies that are just unjust, and find some legislative solutions to prevent those kinds of things from happening to people.
What are your plans to address public safety?
Well, firstly, thank you, Liz, for the question. Firstly, I would work with our colleagues in the House to put policies in place that will create a safer community. I don't think it's something that I could do on my own, but my approach would be prevention and intervention. I think that, I would continue to work to improve community police partnerships. That's something I've been working on because it's an issue in my community. So I've held National Night Out, I've done town halls. I did participate recently in a police walk that was wonderful for what it was intended to do. I think that's really important so that people go to the police when something is happening on a small scale before it becomes something big. So I would encourage that. I do believe in community engagement as a preventive way to improve public safety. I would continue to build on all of the community engagement work that I already do through some of the joint events with other communities that I do every year, public safety forums, events, etc. Just so people can get to know who their neighbors are and look out for each other, and, share information about crimes, participate in safety initiatives together, and try to be on the same page about sharing responsibility for keeping communities safe. I would also fight for funding for recreational programs, ways we can engage young people, try to figure out if there are risk factors and things that we can get ahead of and give them some better alternatives to keep them out of the criminal justice system. I would prioritize funding for law enforcement, make sure they have the resources to recruit and train and adequately compensate officers. So I think there are a lot of different things. We have to do more about gun violence. Of course, thankfully, I think here in Maryland, by comparison, we've passed some good gun control laws in the past 10 years, but I think we have to be, we have to continue to pull on that string. I still feel like, there's more we can do to try to make guns not so easy for people to get. Like what, that's still like an issue. I feel like it's easier to get a gun than a mental health therapist here. Like we have to really look at what we can do to make it harder for people to get guns. So lots of things, underlying issues that need to be addressed as well, Liz. So.
Great, thank you.
As a delegate, how would you fight to protect the rights of vulnerable populations and protected classes? Any specific policies that you might propose or advocate for?
I would absolutely advocate for the protection of some of our of DEI policies. I think the president's DEI executive orders are a deliberate effort to try to roll back the progress that's been made and block access for minorities and disabled individuals. And I think it's concerning to me that there's so many companies that are following suit with that. And I just think we have to hold the line. Like that's what I mean by we need tough leaders. Like we need people who have been in decision-making seats because this stuff is hard. We have to stand up to, to people who think now that DEI is something that it is not. So I think that, I would discuss with perhaps the Legislative Black Caucus ways that we might be able to support policies, introduce policies that create more fair workplaces and schools for minorities, whether they're whether they're labeled in any type of way or not. But that's something I would look to do. I would also, I would be slow to support any legislation that bans DEI related practices that are actually helping create access and opportunity for people who otherwise would not have it. I think the LGBTQ community has been absolutely targeted by this administration. They already face increased threats of violence and discrimination, disparities in healthcare that I would want to work to address in partnership with that community. I would advocate for training for healthcare workers. I think that's often an issue that I know lots of minorities face, LGBTQ, other vulnerable populations, just health workers sort of not maybe understanding those communities as well. So I would definitely want to see investments in training. I would support more access to trans care. I would focus on providing additional support to the poor and vulnerable in general. We have a number of food deserts in our district. I think we've had grocery store closures. I'm concerned about how vulnerable populations are dealing with that. So one of my priorities would actually be to try to connect with local representative or councils to find out like what's being done and how we can further support people in those affected communities where there are food deserts. If it's shuttles to grocery stores or legislation, I don't know, but that's something that I would look at. And then of course I would continue, like I mentioned, funding community colleges who support CCBC anyway, sees a high number of students from vulnerable populations. And so I would absolutely want to protect funding to those colleges to continue to do their work to train and support those communities.
Thank you very much, Kim.
District 8 truly works together as a team, including the District 8 Central Committee members and our state delegation. Could you describe your approach to working as part of a team?
I agree. District 8 Central Committee members definitely work as a strong team, and the team starts with the senator. I think that, we have to, as my approach to answer your question is, I'm a very collaborative team members. I am very communicative. I can play whatever position is needed on the team. You all have seen that. My work with the Unity Dinner was absolutely a team effort. I was a key player on that team. If something was needed, I had no problem stepping in and doing something that may or may not have been under my quote unquote job description, for the team or for that particular project. I'm somebody who just at the end of the day, if it needs to get done, I'm willing to step in and do it. I check in with team members. And you've worked with me on campuses. Brad, you've participated with me on campuses where I pulled in someone into the team when I felt like we needed some additional support, picked him up, went to, and so the campuses I've led, people who showed up, you didn't have to worry about if we have flyers or signs when you came to dress the polls with me. All that stuff's already packed up in my car, because when other people, when I asked other people to join that effort, they didn't have to worry about who was going to get what, because I was already going to go to the office, pick up the signs, get the flyers. Fantastic fantastic Central Committee colleague Bonnie was there to help me. If it's driving down to Owings Mills to get flyers from Jen, like whatever, that's what I'm going to do. And so that's the kind of team member that I am. I step in and I support, whether if I'm leading, I'm cool with doing that. But if there's some other role that I need to play, I'm fine with that too. So I'm a very collaborative and supportive team member.
Thank you.
What are your plans for 2026, and do you plan to run for delegate?
If I'm appointed, I will absolutely run for re-election.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes our questions during your interview tonight. We now invite you to provide 3 minutes of closing remarks.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you to all the members here. I really genuinely believe I'm uniquely qualified for the role. I think we've talked a lot about being ready on day one, but I'm the only one who has a specific experience needed at this particular point in session. The bill drop deadlines have passed. We're voting. So I have an established voting record. I have experience, like I mentioned, serving on a policy board, serving in a caucus on a committee. I have experience with I have a duty to address residents' concerns, so the constituent services. I'm a manager of staff. I know how to staff my office with a great chief of staff. I've already been talking to a couple of people about that, to make sure that we can deliver the kind of constituent services that I do right now to people. I have the readiness to do that on day one. I think most of us have talked about sort of probably the technical aspects of the role, but filling out a bill in a draft form or working with a bill drafter, dropping a bill, reading a vote list, those are all things that are very sort of technical. But the learning curve of being a leader is much longer for someone who hasn't done it. I've led on my job where I serve as a leader and a manager of staff. I've led in the community. I am the person who's most able to handle the leadership and the fiduciary responsibility of a Maryland state delegate in this process. We've all probably tried to tell you that we are the actual delegates doing the job. That's why I said I'm not even going to say that line tonight, that I've been doing the job, because you're probably tired of hearing it. The truth is we're not. None of us are incumbents, but I come the closest to it. I check all the boxes. My reach has been greater. I've worked outside of my community to make a difference, from Dundalk's Family Day, invited to a school there to register voters, to the West Side at a community event, speaking to people about voting, or arranging a large Freedom Walk just weeks ago with my fantastic friends and advocates. My track record has been longer. I feel I've been a more prolific policymaker. I would say, I don't know, but it's certainly been a strong record. And so I just think that I have something unique to offer. I also think it's mission critical that we see minority women leading in District 8 and Eastern Baltimore County as a whole. We need to support minority women. I think that, I'm asking you to support me. I know, I think there may be someone in this process who's already run for office and maybe had the support from the party. But now I'm asking you to support me. We cannot continue to skip over qualified women of color and give everybody else a second and a third and a fourth chance, and some of us have not been given the first. I think the Democratic Party, and I've done it, has bragged about bringing in minorities as voters, as donors, as campaign workers. But what's the point of bringing us to the table if we can't eat? I'm not asking you to give me a seat at the table. I'm asking you not to give away the seat I've already earned. I believe tonight is a legacy setting moment. This is one of those moments that people will look back and remember where we were. What did we decide to do to, did we, double down on that history of exclusion and continue to keep minority women kind of in place? Or did we step up? And I think that we'll be remembered for how we step up or step down in this moment. But either way, I'm here stepping up to be the change that I want to see, however this goes. I think you've got a fantastic group to choose from. I'd be happy with any of them. But I want you to let me know if you need anything else from me. But I'm going to go. I think half of Baltimore County is probably watching and they want to know, who we are as a party. And either we're the party of diversity and inclusion or we're just pretending to be. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time tonight and for
Thank you.
applying for the vacancy.
Thank you.
And she left. So we just so everyone knows, the last two candidates are on the central committee. So they will be asked to participate in the voting component. So we will make sure that they are added in after your deliberations. Everyone should be able to come back, and then there will be a public vote, and they will be included in that vote. So to make sure you are aware of that, we're going to now invite our last candidate to enter into the session. And hopefully he will be with us in one moment. Good evening, Mr. Sheets. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Most of us already know you because you're part of the Central Committee. So we want to welcome you this evening, and we want to make sure that you move forward with your interview process. And so I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Kelner. The thing that I want to say before we close out is that please make sure your question responses are held to a 2-minute limit. And he'll give you further instructions on what needs to occur with all of the rest of the interactions with your responses. So welcome again.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Sheets, and welcome. You know me, I'm Brad Kroner, joined by Margaret Forte, Elizabeth Brown, and Chuck Kropfelder from the District 8 Central Committee. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over some of the rules, some of the format. Tonight, you will be asked a series of 12 questions by members of the Baltimore County Democratic Central Committee members in District 8. You will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and you will also have time for a 3-minute opening statement and a 3-minute closing statement. Before we jump into it, do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm ready.
All right. Thank you so much, and take it away with your opening statement.
Sure. So hello, everyone. I know it's a lot of familiar faces here, but my name is Shannon Sheets. I'm a resident of Parkville in the 8th Legislative District. I'm an elected member of the Baltimore County Democratic State Central Committee. I'm treasurer and have been elected treasurer by my colleagues of the Baltimore County Democratic Party. I'm an officer in my community association as treasurer and have worked within my community as well as with surrounding communities in both Baltimore County and Baltimore City to promote the idea that we can work together to bridge divides and to make our whole region a better place. I've been active in politics for more than 2 decades, going all the way back to kind of the Bush-Gore years of 2000. And I'm a member of the LGBTQ community and have been an activist in that community my entire adult life because my existence is a political issue. It's been debated in the courts and in the court of public opinion for my entire life. I mean, I've only legally been granted the right of marriage after I left college. And I mean, my existence was only made formally legal by the Supreme Court when I was in high school. My partner and I settled in Parkville in 2019, and I immediately became involved with my community because I was raised to believe that I should do what I can to make my community a better and more welcoming place for everyone. Following that ideal, I also ran for the Central Committee in 2022 because I felt like it was the right choice to further democratic policies here in the state of Maryland. Excuse me. I've been a lifelong Democrat because the ideals espoused by the Democratic Party most closely align with my own ideals. And I believe that the progressive policies that the Democratic Party represents will uplift everyone, leave no one behind, and are the best path forward for our country, for our county, and for our district. And I just wanted to be a part of that process in any way that I could. This opportunity to join the Maryland House of Delegates representing the 8th District represents an opportunity for me to support all of my communities in the Maryland State Legislature and to be a champion for the 8th District in Annapolis.
Great, thank you so much. Our first question is from Liz Brown.
Great. Well, welcome, Shannon. Great to have you with us tonight. Why do you want to serve as delegate for District 8, and what qualifications would you bring to the House? And just a reminder of the 2-minute time span.
Sure. So I think my introduction covered a little bit of that, but to add on to that a little more, I do believe that the work that state and local governments do really represents the best way to have an immediate impact on your communities. I know we all get upset and angry, and rightfully so, at what's happening in the federal government, but the work that our state legislature does is going to impact our citizens far more than anything that a congressman or an angry president does on a daily basis. As far as my qualifications, I think I possess a strong work ethic. I'm congenial and I thrive on collaborating with others. And that's especially important in a venue like the House of Delegates, where I'm one of 3 delegates for our district and one of 141 in the House of Delegates. If we don't know how to work together, you don't get anything passed. I'm meticulous and careful. I'm thorough, and I understand the importance of strict fiduciary responsibility. I'm also a trustworthy financial guardian and have been for multiple institutions, both here with the Baltimore County Democratic Party, but also as treasurer for the Harvard Park Community Association for more than half a decade now. I have a strong sense of morals and ethics, and I'm unwilling to compromise on my moral principles, and I think that's important too. We don't want to leave people behind, and we don't want to cut political deals that leave behind people in our district, regardless of who they are, regardless of what the political popularity of that is. And then most importantly, I'm also committed to the idea that the ultimate responsibility of a delegate is to listen to and to be responsive to their constituents. The most important thing that anybody can do in the House of Delegates is to make sure that they're adequately representing what their constituency needs. And that comes by being out in the district and talking to neighbors and talking to people and making sure that your beliefs align most closely with what they want to see in their district.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Shannon. What do you consider to be one of your greatest achievements or contributions on behalf of the community?
Sure. So I'd love to talk for hours with you all, but I won't, don't worry. About the little things, the stream and neighborhood cleanups, the advocacy for our local parks, the community events that I've helped to facilitate on behalf of our neighborhoods. But I will say that I feel as though the greatest achievement that I felt for our community was the opportunity I had to serve as a member of the Sustainable Communities Work Group for Baltimore County, specifically focusing on the Hillendale, Parkville, Overlea region. It was a months-long process that involved multiple public meetings, seeking community input throughout that region, and then working with the Department of Planning to create the Sustainable Work Group plan that talked about both social and economic development in these neighborhoods. It was a really great way to meet with people in the district and talk with them about the way that needs differed depending on your communities. I can tell you, for example, that my community is largely residential. So we talked about things like our sewer and water infrastructure. We talked about our sidewalks and our roads. But I also know that it's important to focus on things like the commercial districts. The Harford Road and Bel Air Road corridors are ones that have a lot of infrastructure development that needs to happen with regard to storefronts and bringing in new store owners and marketplaces for those locations too. The entire process was really satisfying, and it felt like a fantastic way to positively impact a large swath of our district, and also a swath of our district that has sort of languished and felt left behind compared to other parts of Baltimore County.
Thank you, Shannon.
How have you supported the Democratic Party and our agenda, our platform, and how would you do so as a member of the House?
So I've been a Democrat, like I said, my entire adult life. I've never been registered as anything else. I've been working on behalf of Democratic candidates for years and years, and including here in Maryland, canvassing, electioneering, and working with various candidates up and down the ballot from delegate all the way up to governor to get them elected, because that's the best way that we affect change is by electing good Democrats to office. I joined the Central Committee because I wanted to continue to be a part of that process, and I've been very active in party politics. As I mentioned before, I'm treasurer of the committee and have been a careful fiscal guardian because I recognize how important it is that we stay up to date on those things and that we keep our ledger clean. And I also have helped out in every way that I feel as though I possibly can. I mean, I stepped up to run the AV for our town hall at Solars Point. I stepped up to help plan the Unity dinner. I mean, Chuck, I just let you know recently that, I know we have the difficulty with the meeting or the office space, and I'm prepared to help move when that becomes necessary too. I feel as though I'm available and hardworking when it comes to doing whatever I can to further democratic ideals, whether that's the machinery of the party or helping to promote candidates up and down the ballot. And regardless of the outcome of tonight's selection process, I do and will continue to be an active Democrat.
Thank you. All right, our next question is from Chuck. Are you there? All right, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. What are your top three priorities if you are appointed as delegate, and what would your legislative goals be for the current session? How will you ensure that you get up to speed as quickly as possible to work towards those priorities?
So I can tell you that I feel as though the top three priorities for our district right now, based off of what I've heard from talking with neighbors and what I've seen in my own life, would be the rising cost of living. Public safety is always the number one thing on people's minds. And also access to effective and affordable healthcare is an important thing too. Um, as far as legislative priorities for this session, that's a little more difficult to talk about because we are so late in the session at this point. Any bills that are newly introduced have to go to the Rules Committee, and at that point, you have to fight to even have them heard on the floor. But even at this point, once I'm assigned to committee, I'm able to work to shepherd already filed legislation through the process, and that would take precedence over trying to pass new legislation this session, rather, focusing on that for next session. And there's a lot of great legislation that we can look at for this session too. Things about collective bargaining, for example, that could use some help getting through the process. And those are things that collective bargaining is a great way to help elevate our wage earners and make sure that we're competitive, that they're able to help their wages rise with the cost of living too. And all of that, as I know we'll discuss, is going to be dependent upon what committee you're assigned to as well. But as far as getting up to speed, I'm a fast learner. And I recognize that nobody has experience in the House of Delegates before getting elected there directly, but I'm confident that I would be able to quickly learn the procedures, everything necessary to be effective in the House of Delegates.
Thank you.
What current positions do you hold that you would need to resign from should you assume the delegate role?
So I would love to remain involved with my community association, but I would step down as an officer as treasurer because I do recognize that that's a position that needs somebody who has more time to be in the district at all, or in the community rather, at all times, and be more carefully attentive to it. And I wouldn't want, that to lapse as a result of my being in Annapolis. If there ever became a concern of a conflict of interest, I would resign from the board there as well. But I do greatly value being able to work with my community as on the board of the association, and wouldn't resign unless it really became necessary. I'm temporarily serving as as a treasurer for another candidate too, and I would resign from that as well. And of course, I would have to resign from the Baltimore County Democratic State Central Committee too.
Great, thank you.
What committee would you like to serve on and why? If you're assigned to that committee, what would your legislative priorities be on that committee?
So this is another fun question because honestly, we have a lot of great committees in the House. And I would truly be eager and happy to serve on whatever committee Speaker Jones would ultimately assign me to. Um, Healthcare is a big issue for me. I have a background in public health. I worked in public health for several years after I left college, and I understand a lot of the difficulties around the healthcare system in this country and would love to help be a part of fixing that here in Maryland. So, for example, if I were assigned to health and government operations, I would love to work with some of our stakeholders and leaders to craft legislation to make healthcare more accessible and more affordable, and perhaps even spread the opportunity to ensure that we're protecting at-risk people in our state with healthcare. So somebody like, Vinnie DeMarco and the Healthcare for All Alliance, I think is a great partner to work with to make sure that we're crafting legislation that would be able to address those issues. But I can also tell you that I have a formal degree in environmental biology. Excuse me. And environmental remediation and conservation are things that are very important to me too. And of course, the Chesapeake Bay is an enormous resource and an important thing for us here in Maryland too. So if I were assigned to environment and transportation, that would be a fantastic way to facilitate those things as well. I also have, again, a great understanding of fiscal guardianship. So economic matters or ways and means, I genuinely would be happy to be assigned to any committee and would be eager to serve on any of them.
Thank you.
How do you propose the government can make life in Maryland more affordable? And what would you do as delegate to help offset high costs and inflation?
That's a pretty difficult question to tackle head on because it is a question of a lot of interconnected problems. So we have housing affordability, we have energy prices, we have food costs, inflation, wage stagnation. And there's no one fix to any one of those issues, but certainly we can work to address all of them one at a time. I think right now, if you asked a lot of people here in Maryland what their biggest cost of living problem was, it would be it would be energy costs because of the exploding energy costs we've seen. We know that there's a lot of problems that go into that, including the way that coal plants are being shut down in Maryland. The legislature can work on things. The legislature is able to take steps to do things like work with the coal plants to see if we can extend the leases a little bit, slow down the timeline on shutting them down in order to increase energy supply. I'm a big champion of getting rid of coal eventually because has such terrible environmental effects. But if we need to prolong it for now to ensure that folks aren't paying $700 a month to heat their homes, I think that maybe that's the choice that we need to make. Likewise, empowering our state government to bargain better with other states if we have an energy deficit here, I think is something that we should do to ensure that, again, we're keeping those energy costs down as much as possible. And a different side of this, we've seen food costs go up, and I know all of us can't go a single day without just seeing another article about how expensive eggs are right now. Maryland's number one industry is still agriculture. And by empowering our agricultural sector, by passing legislation, maybe taking over some of the subsidies, again, at least temporarily, that the federal government has kind of shut down in order to help our farmers keep their agricultural costs low, because they can pass those savings on to consumers and help to keep the worst spikes of inflation in food from coming to Maryland consumers.
Thank you.
What are your plans for addressing the housing crisis?
This is another great question that also is one that's going to need both state and local cooperation. I think we all know that here in the 8th District, we have some of the densest development in the state. I mean, we're a small district because all the houses are so close together. And I don't think anybody here would advocate that we take the little bit of open space that we have and develop it for the sake of adding more housing. I do think we need to encourage and incentivize builders to have smart redevelopment. So rather than taking $100,000 or $200,000 house and flipping it and making it luxurious and selling it for $600,000, we try to encourage and create incentives for them to keep them affordable for people in their neighborhoods. We've seen this problem everywhere. My neighborhood houses were $175,000 6 years ago, and now they're $350,000. And one just got built down the street that they're trying to sell for $600,000. Those aren't keeping up with the increase in wages. And as long as that continues to be a problem, we're going to continue to have issues with housing. We also should examine things like creative redevelopment opportunities for existing spaces. I know there's been some discussion about White Marsh Mall. If it's not going to be a mall, if it's going to be a big empty space, I'm not saying that we load it down with thousands of apartments, but maybe we can find some mixed use communities or opportunities to build not only housing there, but maybe even focus or build a school there too. Because we also can't create other problems while we solve the housing crisis here either. And things like school overcrowding is certainly, and infrastructure limits are very important when we talk about trying to create opportunities for people to own homes here in the 8th District.
So what are your plans to address public safety?
And that's probably the first thing that people talk about when you ask them what's on their mind about what issues are happening in our district is public safety. I think our legislature did a wonderful job with the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, but I have seen that law enforcement has been resistant to fully implement it. And there's sort of this gap between the political understanding of what the law should do and how police are using it. So maybe we need to go back to the table again and work more closely with law enforcement to craft a bill that still ensures that we're protecting the rights of citizens, but also produces a bill that law enforcement is happy to work with so that we're getting repeat offenders off the street, that people aren't afraid, or that the police aren't afraid to use the law in order to make sure that we're having good outcomes with public safety. And then I'll also say that part of it too is just working and educating and talking with our communities because, I understand that these days everybody sees that every time a package gets snatched off of somebody's porch or a window gets broken from somebody's car, we see it on Nextdoor and we see it on Facebook. And those are, of course, quality of life issues that we need to address. But we also know that crime is actually down and violent crime is down here in Maryland. And, communicating and educating the public on that, I think, is important because sometimes the reality isn't just people complaining about package thieves on Facebook, but a picture of the whole of what's happening here in Baltimore County.
As a
Thank you.
delegate, how would you fight to protect the rights of vulnerable populations and protected classes? Any specific policies that you might propose or advocate for?
So as a member of the LGBTQ community, I'm pretty acutely aware of just how aggressive the rhetoric and attacks from our federal government have been. Even though it does kind of right now feel sort of singularly targeted to the LGBTQ community, I do recognize that it's going to continue to expand. We know that they're going to attack women's rights. We know that they're going to attack the rights of other minorities too. And we need to make sure that we are continuing to strengthen our protections here in Maryland for that. Living in Maryland, we have had the fortune of having a government that protects us. So we've seen the Trans Health Equity Act, we've seen enshrining abortion access into our Constitution. And I think those are all fantastic steps that we need to continue to focus on. Part of it is going to be reactionary. As the government levies new attacks, we need to make sure that we can focus and defend against them. And it also means empowering our judiciary and our, our attorney general to be prepared to defend the state when those attacks come from the federal government in any way that we can. I do recognize that this is an incredibly critical thing. We see a hostile Supreme Court, but I think that we here in Maryland do have the opportunity to pass the sort of protections that we've continued to do with things like enshrining abortion access into our Constitution in order to ensure that we're making those protections for everybody here in the state and everybody who needs them that comes to the state.
All right. District 8 truly works together as a team, including our state delegation and our District 8 Central Committee members. Could you describe your approach to working as part of a team?
Sure. I'll tell you that I love the collaborative approach that then Senator Klaus Meyer put together when I first got elected here in the district. And I know that Senator Jackson has pledged to, and he will continue that sort of spirit of togetherness here in the 8th. I would happily and eagerly work to continue to involve the Central Committee to make sure that the delegates and the senator and our county executive and council people are all on the same page. Excuse me. And that spirit of collaboration here in the 8th is something that I've been proud of as a Central Committee member and would certainly want to continue as a delegate as well.
Thank you. right, our
And
last question is from, there he is.
transfer 2026, and do you plan to run for delegate?
So if I'm appointed, I would run for reelection. Having said that, if I'm not appointed, I might run if an opportunity presented itself. But my goal would never be to primary an effective Democratic delegate in the House. I don't think that's a productive way for the party to run. And unless there was an organic opportunity, I wouldn't seek to run for election in 2026 if I were not appointed today.
All right, that was our final question as part of tonight's interview. We now invite you to provide 3 minutes of closing remarks.
Sure. I appreciate your genuine consideration of my candidacy. Thank you all so much for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. I hope that my experience advocating for my communities reflects the type of legislator that I would hope to be and that I would try to empower and lift up all of the 8th District. If appointed, I would also bear the distinction of being just the 8th LGBTQ member of the House of Delegates and the only one representing Baltimore County. That does feel particularly important to me, recognizing right now how many attacks are coming forward from the federal government. We just saw a different congressman from another state introduce a resolution encouraging the Supreme Court to try to overturn Hodges, which is the same-sex marriage decision. And while I recognize that that's unlikely, it doesn't stop me from being afraid for what the future will bring. And as a member of that community, I want to be representative of my community and stand strong for it. But in addition to that, and more importantly than that, I do think that there's a lot of great work that we can do here in the 8th for the 8th District. And I would be eager and happy to serve and to reach out and network with the constituents and make sure that their voices are heard in Annapolis. And with all that, I thank you all for the opportunity to interview tonight.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, Shannon, and thank you for applying for the vacancy.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shannon, good evening again. We will be calling you back after the deliberations because you are a central committee member, and as such, you will be participating in the vote. You will not be participating in the deliberations. However, since I don't have a time on that, I'm not 100% sure how long you will be waiting because we're at our time now that we should be ending deliberations. We've gone over a bit for these interviews and as such have had great information shared with us regarding the responses from all of the candidates. So it would be very difficult for us to have cut individuals off so that we could just meet a timeline. So we've gone a bit long. And so we hope that you all will be patient with us so that Legislative District 8 members can go through a period of deliberation and come back so that we can have the vote. So with that being said, thank you very much. I will touch base with the candidates to let them know we're prepared for them to come return. And then right now, I'm going to take a few moments to have a dialogue with the panel. So thank you so much for your time and your dedication to this process.
Great, and thank you again. Should I leave the room now?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Panel of Legislative District 8, great job. I know that you need to go into deliberations. What I would like to be able to do, we are at 8:26 at this moment based on my computer's time. Would it be adequate to provide you with a time and put you into the breakout room until 8:50? Would that give you enough time to deliberate your candidates and then be able to return to the room successfully? If you feel like you absolutely need more time, all of you have my number. You can contact me and we will notify the group by announcing to them that there will be 10 or 15 minutes more that may be needed. Okay. But for now, 8:50, does that sound reasonable?
I think that's a good starting point.
Okay, thank you very much. So what I'm going to do is put all of you into a breakout room, and you may go into deliberations. So that gives you about 30 minutes, correct? I add 20 to that. Yeah, just about 20, 20, 20. I'll give you 25 minutes in the breakout room, and you can notify me if you need any additional time. I think, let's see. No, we don't want them to close. To all of our participants who are on live stream, if you could all return at 8:50, that would really be appreciated. We're going to pause the live stream and we will return to live stream after our committee returns from their deliberations. With that being said, we will pause the live stream now and we will move into their deliberations. Thank you so much for your patience.
Is everybody on? Hello?
Yes, I am here. I believe we are still streaming to YouTube. So,
Okay.
Give me 1 second, folks.
okay.
Is everybody on?
Here, I think we're waiting for the YouTube stream stuff.